Warriors, welcome to episode 363 of the Anxiety Guide podcast. Thank you so much for subscribing to this podcast. And if you get a chance, please leave it a positive rate and review if in fact it is helping you in some way. If anyone would like to learn more about any of my anxiety recovery programs, head over to theanxietyguide.com today and learn more about these transformative programs. Warriors, in this podcast episode, I want to talk about the ego / your inner child. Okay, and I also want to talk about how we have consciously and unconsciously created a prison within us. The ego-constructed prison that leads us to anxiety. More often than not, as we feel stressed out, as we feel tired but wired, and we place worry on a high pedestal. Worry becomes our safety net. As we recognize that these things are happening, we tend to see them as normal. Okay? And in society today, if you're not a go-getter, okay, you're lazy. If you're not being productive, and if you don't have a tremendous amount on your to-do lists, right, then you're seen as someone who is unproductive, lazy, uncaring, so on and so forth. But today I want to step away from that mold. I want to step away from that cycle, that pattern, and I want to open up some of the reasons for why and how we've constructed this ego-constructed prison within us. I want you to recognize, because so many problems today are interpersonal problems, interpersonal relationship problems. I want you to recognize right here, right now, that the people that emotionally challenge you the most are the greatest blessings you could have in your life, because they are revealing to you what still needs to be healed within you. Your greatest challenges are the most important tests you'll ever be given in this lifetime. Can you imagine right now adopting this belief system? How would your life be different? Of course, the ego doesn't want you to adopt this belief system because it wants you to stay within its tight hold over you. And the ego / inner child doesn't like losing control over you, meaning its perspectives want to be maintained. Right? And anything that goes against the ego's perspective will be seen as a threat, almost to the point of death. If there's a certain person in your life right now, or someone from your past that you continue to blame for your problems today, you need to recognize those people as being blessings in your life, because they are revealing fragments of the ego within you that still need to be healed, because you are on a journey of evolving in terms of your own soul, and you cannot evolve to the next chapter in this journey until you begin to change the way you see those people. I mean, this is big, isn't it? It's really, really big. And the second thing is that when we feel challenged, right, we go to an unfamiliar situation, we're presented with a challenge and we feel it, we think it, right? When we experience these challenges, we need to see them to some extent as some kind of a test. And the test is my old self going to show up during this challenge, or is my new self going to show up during this challenge? Isn't that the test? And so at the end of the day, we ask ourselves the question, the most important question, of did my ego take over this day, or did my higher self take over this day? We are still talking about anxiety here. Understand that, right? Because anxiety is connected to this prison constructed by the ego, right? And if we continue to be led by anxiety, we are also being led by the ego. It is absolutely imperative that you turn your focus from blaming outwards to healing inwards. That means we no longer blame a situation. We no longer blame a person in the present or the past. We no longer blame anything on the outside, but in truth, we begin to focus on our healing inwards. This is not about anyone else. This is not about anybody else, past, present, or future. This is about you and only you. Now, some of you may not be ready to hear that, but at some point you're going to have to accept that. You're going to have to accept that this whole ego-constructed prison that's causing anxiety is created by you, perpetuated by you, and you're going, well, I didn't want to create this, right? You didn't consciously create it, you unconsciously created it, and now it's up to you to consciously reveal it in order to heal it, okay? So, taking responsibility for this is very important, and we must live in a place where we see things that happen to us from a new perspective. These are blessings, these are challenges, these are tests that must be passed, and we must ask ourselves, how would my higher self deal with this? And to go even further, who is my higher self? There are so many people out there that don't really understand the concept of a higher self. Now, to give you a brief understanding of the higher self, think about you as a child. Don't let your ego see you as a child. See your child experience, your childhood experience, from the perspective of purity. Remember when you were running around on the playground? You weren't thinking about any kind of danger, right? You were outgoing. You didn't see people as good or bad. You accepted everyone. You played with everybody, right? You didn't look for familiarity, but you embraced the uncertainty of the next moment. There was a lot of good there. There was purity. There was a genuine enjoyment over the present moment, right? So we are just simply going back to our truth again, okay? Anxiety is a construction. We have constructed anxiety, and it is up to us to deconstruct it. Now, as you get to know your higher self better, it's important for you to carry around these two words. The words are purposeful discipline. Purposeful discipline in conducting the practice of moving through your day as your higher self. Now, it's interesting with your higher self that as you begin to come in to this unfamiliar state of seeing things, you start to liberate yourself. As you liberate yourself, there's no more anxiety, because you see the things that used to cause your anxiety from a very small perspective. Those are all very petty things that you used to give a lot of focus and energy to, when in fact, you didn't need to fear anything, even death. We're programmed to be afraid of death. Why? What if it's this beautiful experience? What if we go back to this womb of eternity, which is just absolutely beautiful? What if we see death not as the end, but just another chapter? Can you imagine what your life would be like today? Speaking from my own experience, as I've moved closer and closer to getting in touch with my higher self that saw all the fighting and all the striving and all the ego from my past as petty, I began noticing that inaction becomes more attractive than reaction as my higher self. It's almost like there's this initial feeling that shows up that says, do something about it, figure this out. But then my higher self shows up and says, there's nothing to figure out. Because the idea of figuring it out is coming from my inner child/ego. So, because I no longer go there, I'm brought to somewhere else. More often than not, when you become your higher self, you tend to leave things alone. That includes your symptoms. And you're not afraid of the consequences of leaving something alone. That's living through your higher self. You're no longer in a power struggle, right? Getting one up on somebody, getting revenge over somebody, even if they've done you wrong in some way, right? Past or present. You leave things alone, knowing that when someone criticizes you or something goes wrong with somebody else, that's their own stew pot. Let them swim in it. I'm not going to swim in their stew pot. Well, you walk away. There's inaction there. This is farther along on the journey. So we must begin recognizing that the people that challenge us today and our past are blessings. They are blessings that are revealing to us what needs to be healed. We need to focus our attention away from blaming outwards to healing inwards. And we must begin to follow through with the idea of purposeful discipline in the direction of becoming our higher selves. Because once we do, the things that used to cause us anxiety no longer do, because we see beyond them. We see beyond them, right? But when we're in such a high state, a high emotional state, all we can see is tunnel vision. All we can see is the threat. Once we step outside of that and we start looking inwards, we start to go, my God, even these symptoms and sensations in my body that I'm experiencing, if I respond to this through my higher self, I believe that I can trust the idea of inaction, and that becomes it. Understand this. Most of our suffering derives from the fear of rejection and its evil twin sister, the craving for acceptance. However, liberating yourself would be to no longer be enslaved by these two needs and to begin to see far beyond them. You are a warrior. That's why I call you a warrior, right? And a warrior isn't someone who goes out there and does battle with things. No, the warrior sees beyond doing the battle. And so you're getting there. You are more than anxiety. My friends, if you're enjoying this podcast, please give it a positive rate and review, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. I love you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
The most powerful anxiety guidebooks on true anxiety recovery are now available on Amazon. Pick up Beyond Anxiety and F Coping, Start Healing, and supercharge your healing journey today. Also visit www.theanxietyguy.com to connect with Dennis and find the right online program for you. Remember, you are more than anxiety. See you in the next podcast episode.